show you earlier where I mixed the, right when I took the fat off of the stove, then I mixed in 2 tablespoons of olive oil into the fat. And I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you that. I was thinking of showing you, and I don't know, maybe I did, maybe I caught it on one of the, one of the takes that I was doing, but I didn't say it if I did. You just, right when the fat gets taken off the stove, then you want to melt a little bit, or, anyway, before you really get going and doing the lye and everything into it, you want to put your olive oil into it. Okay, so wouldn't you know it, the battery light starts flashing just as I get to trace here. So, I'll show you this. When you drip it, you can see we're getting, let me actually put you over here. You can see we're keeping our, I hope you can see, but over here you can see that we're keeping our drips. So I'm going to now move this into its mold, and I'm going to take you over there and show you that basically in a second. This is the difficult part here, guys. You pour it into your mold. Now obviously nobody's going to want a bar of soap that big. You can certainly cut that. You're more than likely you're going to, well, if you're going to use it for yourself, you're going to cut it. I'm going to mill this stuff, so I'm going to grind it up in a little bit. And, well, in a couple weeks, after it's totally cured, I'm going to grind it up and put it into, and remelt it. So I'm not going to cut it up, but I'll show you, well, I normally wouldn't cut it up because I'm going to mill it, but I'll show you that in a couple days. So basically what we do is we pour this into the mold. Scrape it into the mold however you want to do this, and again, like I said, I'm using this mold here. I didn't know if it would be big enough, but it certainly looks like it's going to be. And you can use any kind of homemade mold, especially if you've never made soap before. The last thing you want to be doing is going out and getting, putting a lot of money into something that may not be something you want to do with your day. And if you're just doing this for yourself, you don't really need to worry about all the fancy molds. You don't care. You're going to rub it on your body. It's not like it's going to stay at any pretty thing anyway. And if you want to give it as gifts even, you can take like 2 washcloths and sew it together and put one of your bars of soap right in the middle of that. Then nobody ever sees your bar of soap, and you don't have to worry about it so much. For personal use, I don't mold my soap. I usually put it in, a lot of times I'll put it in a big plastic lined cake pan, unless if I got one of my nice, if I'm making a really big batch, I've got a couple stainless steel cake pans, and I just put it in there, and then I just cut it into the size I want it to be. And I'll show you, like I said, I'll show you cutting in a little bit. But what you want to do after we get this in, just in case the camera goes dead on me before I do, is we're going to start the curing process. We're going to cover it all up. I'm going to make it a little neater than this, but we're going to cover it all up, and then we're going to let it sit for probably a couple hours, sometimes overnight. It just depends on how long it takes until it feels solid. When you put your finger on it, your finger doesn't go into it. So you guys may not even be able to see what I'm doing. When you push your finger down on it, it doesn't go in, and then you cut it. And you don't want it to be, you don't want to wait for the 2 weeks before you cut it. And the main reason for that is because once you get your air circulating around there, it cures a lot faster. So if you don't cut it, then you'll probably have to wait for an entire month. If you just let this whole thing cure as one thing, you probably have to wait an entire month before you could use it. And I think that's about it. I think I'm pretty cleaned out. So at this point, like I said, you don't have to worry about it. What's your material? Well, I shouldn't say that. You do. Don't put aluminum in it. If you're going to use the cardboard, obviously line the cardboard, because this will soak right into the cardboard. You don't have to, I normally when I'm just doing this for myself, I don't even smooth it out, but if you want it to be just a little neater, whatever mark is in there, if you want to keep this as your bar of soap, you can write your initials into it, you know, and that'll stay in there. But anyway, we're just going to let this set. You have just completed the hardest part of the whole thing. That was it. That was hard. Now it's just a waiting game. You just need to let it cure. You want it to, now you want it to cure slow. The slower it cures, the less likely you're going to have for separation, and the less likely you're going to have lye pockets. So that's why at this point we kind of put a little towel over this, and so it kind of stays warm and doesn't cool off super fast. And I have a towel underneath, yikes, and I have a couple towels on top, and I'm just trying to keep the heat from saponification. Heats everything up, so I'm just trying to keep all the heat that's in that soap in the soap, and it will of course eventually cool down. But really, you have just done the hardest thing. If you did this, if you thought making soap was hard, you can see it's really a very easy thing to do. It's not super dangerous. It's not like lye is a monster waiting to eat you. It's just something to be respected. We have created soap. Now we just got to let it finish. There's nothing more we can do for it. It's got to finish all on its own. It's got to go through the saponification process. So anyway, I think my batteries are about dead, so I'll have to change those, and I'll bring you back when we get to cutting that. I'll bring you back and show you that. Okay, I started cutting, and of course my camera stopped working right in the middle of it, so get back to doing this. Once you get it to the point that you can put your finger down there and you're not getting any, you're not going to get any, it's not giving at all, then you can cut it. And I am just doing this for milling, so I'm not really, and you can pop it out of your thing and cut it. I was going to do it this way so that it was more, I could catch any of the crumbs that might come off of it. But sometimes it may have been easier to do it inside by popping it off. But anyway, then you pop it off, and here is where some people differ on what to do. Some people say just leave it in here and let it cure. I'm not, that's not as an important thing for me. And I left my all the way over here, so 1 second. At this point, this is sat for about 10 hours. It took a little longer to cure than to set up to hardness than it did to go to trace. It actually went to trace really fast, but it got to hardness really slow, and I can't give you time frames. I can't tell you in 2 hours it'll be hard, or in 8 hours it'll be hard. This one was actually 10 hours. It's been the weather outside is very wet today, so I'm thinking that's probably the reason it's taken so long to go to get dried. But anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put I left my thing out in the summer kitchen, so I don't have it. So 1 second, I'm going to put this over top and flip it over. So I'm going to put you guys down. I'll be right back. Okay, so then you kind of stack it up like this. Now I'm going to show you a mistake that I made here. You can see right here, this one here broke. Usually that's a sign that I didn't let it set long enough. And so when you're checking it out, push on the whole thing, push all over it, and make sure the whole thing is set up. It's no big deal. It just means that this is not, I'm going to have a kind of funny shaped bar because part of it broke away. I'm going to mill all of mine anyway, so it's not that big of a deal, but if you wanted a bar, now you've got a funny shaped bar anyway. So anyway, now we kind of stack it so that air can flow around it. One of the best ways I usually do it is on a tote lid. I'll show you that in just a minute. But I do it on a tote lid, and then I can move it from place to place if it gets in the way or something like that. But put it someplace, and now you're going to let it set for a minimum of 2 weeks. Some people even say a month. The old way of testing, I've never had to worry about this because mine sets up pretty fast, but the old way, because I do it in the winter time. If you do it in the summer, it may take a little longer to cure. But anyway, the old way of testing is you take and you lick the soap. If you feel a burning or a live wire is what it's often called, a live wire sensation on your tongue, this means that the lye has not been fully incorporated into the saponification process, and and you need to let it set a little bit longer. I never worry about that. Again, to me, you can kind of feel it because the sap and the fat are still coming together at this point, and if you touch it, it still feels like there's a bit of a fat, oily feeling to it. It kind of feels a little greasy, and that's because it's, sapification doesn't happen all at once. It takes a little while to happen. And so it's still happening now. And anyway, so that's how I do it. The other way I do it is by smell. Right at this moment, this still smells like lye and fat. It doesn't have a very pleasant smell to it. If you take it out, if you pop out your soap and you're smelling it, you're like, oh my God, this stuff reeks. I made it wrong. No, it's not. You haven't yet. It's still processing. It takes a little while for this to happen. It's we call it curing, but what's actually happening is the chemical reaction is still going on. And it slows down. The closer it gets to being finished, the slower it gets. So, it's going to take a couple weeks, and by the time you get to that couple weeks, it's going to look and smell just like soap. And I'll take you in and show you that here, and just show you some that I made. I've been making it all along, and I'll show you some that's a little further along. But anyway, this is going to be milled down. My other soap that I made is I'm going to be doing some milling, and I'll take you and show you how to do that. But we're going to set this someplace. Doesn't matter if it sets in the sun or out of the sun. Once it gets milled, and if you put herbs into it, then of course, like any time you want to store it out of the sun, wrap it in brown paper is usually the best. After that's cured, you wrap it in brown paper, and that's to preserve the quality of the herbs in the soap as opposed to the soap. But any place you've got a horizontal surface that you're not using, you can set this to let it cure for the next 2 weeks to a month. Okay, I know we don't have smell-o-vision here, but if you smell this bar of soap here, it smells just like a bar of soap. Now this, like I said, these are kind of chopped up a little bit more because I'm about ready to get going on milling. This one here is about 3 weeks. It's been ready to go for a while. You can take this up and just use it just as it is, as soap. This here's about 2 weeks. This one I went really fast with, and you can kind of tell because it's very crumbly. It's still soap. It's going to be great for milling. That's not the problem, but when you go a little faster, when you try to hurry the process along, a lot of times you get this crumbly looking soap as opposed to the more smooth soap of this. But as it stands, this right here, this is good lye soap. Sometimes you'll hear, the old granny women talking about good lye soap. Go ahead and wash up with a good lye soap. That's what this is. This will get you cleaner. It's a better disinfectant than even soap with disinfectant in it. And it's great for, like, if you have acne problems or if you have psoriasis. It really works better with your skin. When you do things naturally, the pH balances kind of work together a lot better than they do now than they do without it. But anyway, so I'm going to be milling this one up probably tomorrow. Maybe this afternoon. I gotta get something done this morning, but maybe, and I'll show you how that's done, the milling process. But anyway, that is really it. That's how to make deer tallow soap.